a really awful story last week, and it raises questions about how this was reported in this volatile context of Black Lives Matter. Now, last Friday, the national broadcaster reported that a baby girl in the remote Northern Territory town of Katherine had died while her mother was in police custody. Katherine Aboriginal community leaders call for answers after death of baby while mother was in NT police custody, said the headline. The story noted that NT police arrested the 21-year-old mother of the 4-month-old baby and a 5-year-old girl at a public housing unit in Katherine East on Sunday morning. And, quote, the girl's mother was still with police when the baby died later that day. It was a damning account. What could be more callous than police arresting a parent and leaving a baby and a small child alone? Channel 10 journalist Antoinette Lattouf tweeted, "This is truly awful. A 4-month-old girl dies while her mum is in custody. Her Indigenous mum is in custody. Surely the cops didn't leave the 2 kids by themselves when they arrested their mother. Surely not." Sydney Morning Herald crime reporter Sally Rawthorne tweeted, "Holy moly, 4-month-old baby girl dies while mother was in Northern Territory police custody." But an alert Twitter user noticed something was amiss, tweeting, "This has now been updated 23 minutes ago to include the ABC understands the baby was left with her father and a grandfather who had been drinking." And we noticed that the article reflects the fact it has been updated, but doesn't elaborate on what changed in the story, what was added. As Lattouf mentioned, this article made no mention of charges or who, if anybody, the baby was with. ABC editorial policies require journalists to make reasonable efforts to ensure that material facts are accurate and presented in context, and not to present factual content in a way that will materially mislead the audience. Surely the omission here was misleading, and it came at a volatile time when it comes to police dealings with Indigenous Australians. We asked the ABC a series of questions about this error of omission, and they responded by saying that the information was added as soon as that had been cleared with ABC Legal. Well, that's just not good enough. There could have been no legal problem with including at the outset that the children were left with members of the community, if not the family. No one needed to be identified if there were any legal problems. This story is tragic and sickening enough. Why report it in a way that points a horrendous finger of blame at the police? Rebecca, again, I mean, this stuff is just so sensitive. When you're reporting it, report all the facts, put it in context. Don't try and suggest that the police might have left a baby on its own.
Well, that's exactly right. And I mean, there have been other tragic stories of this kind where critical pieces of information have been left out of the general reporting. I can think of one of an Indigenous woman who was imprisoned and who had been the victim of domestic violence before she went into prison, and eventually I mean, it was a horrible story, and there was blame enough to go around in a lot of quarters. But the fact that she had been the victim of domestic violence and that her partner was also Indigenous was always left out of the mainstream reporting, and yet it was a critical piece of information for understanding what went on and why the woman was so ill and eventually passed away in custody. She went back and forth between the hospital and the police station. So I think, you know, you might say, oh, gosh, it's just an error. But, you know, once, look, you could say that, but there's a pattern here.
It does fit a pattern. And, Jennifer, this goes to exactly what Jacinda Price talks about. You know, why try and create the focus on police versus Indigenous communities where the statistics tell us that that's not where the damage is done? She wants people to focus on these incidents, that they are tragic and they are hurting and harming and taking lives every day. But a lot of the media avoid talking about them because they are so horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, Jacinta Price is one of the most, undoubtedly, one of the most, if not the most powerful, not just Indigenous writer. She's a brilliant writer, full stop. But she is a no-holds-barred kind of writer, and she lays it down for us. She lays the facts down. She tells the truth. And she has an approach to journalism and political writing and an analysis that is disinterested, objective truth, evidence-based writing, and that really irritates people. But one of the things that I find absolutely extraordinary about the particular case that you just covered is the journalist asking Twitter, surely not. Why didn't she ring the police?
Exactly.
Why is she asking Twitterdom?
Yeah, get the facts out there. Don't rely on Twitter. Where is the journalism? Good question. Tim, you've seen this over many years. I always think of our late, great mate, Bill Leake, and instead of focusing on the horrific family issues that he was trying to focus on in a cartoon, people decided to try and take it out on him instead.
Absolutely. The thing that astonishes me about this story is the ABC evidently had all the facts first, but were under some legal instruction about including the detail about the father and the grandfather. Now, in that case, you hold the entire story back. I've been involved in many of these sort of stories where you've got the skeleton of the story, the outline of it, but you're waiting for a fairly crucial chunk of it to be included before you can run the entire story. Otherwise, as the ABC did, you give a skewed impression of what's occurred, who might be responsible, and so on. So, and they ran it in a way that encouraged that kind of response as well.
Yep.
They ran it with, questions must be asked about something we can't fully tell you about.
Well, let's not be too twee about it. This could trigger or motivate attacks on the police.
Absolutely.
This is the sort of volatility you're dealing with. Yeah, it's worrisome.